Welcome to WorkSpan TV. I'm Allison Avalos, and I'm joined today by Senior Compensation Practice Leader Carrie Hsu to talk about common challenges and questions associated with merit matrices. Carrie, first off, for our viewers who may not be familiar with a merit matrix, can you talk about what it is and how it's used?
Simply put, a merit matrix, as the term matrix implies, is in its simplest terms a two-factor table, so to speak. And this is a tool that compensation departments will produce for their managers, their line managers, to help them allocate their merit increases in a fair, equitable manner. A typical merit matrix will have on one row the performance rating of the employee, and then on the other column it will have their position in range. Those are probably two of the most common. Obviously, as the performance goes up, you would expect the recommended increase to go up. But inversely, as the position in range goes up, the recommended increase will go down. And we can talk a little bit more about that. You end up with a number of individual cells, and based on the position in the salary range and the performance rating of that individual, it provides a manager with guidance as to what would be an appropriate increase for that employee.
Okay, so it's a tool commonly used to decide the individual's pay increase, and it kind of puts a framework around that thinking for an organization or maybe a department. You started to allude to this question of position and range, and I want to pick that up for a second. A number of organizations struggle a bit to rationalize the idea of position and range as an element that's being considered when deciding an employee's increase. And I think particularly in those organizations where there's a heavy emphasis on paying for performance. And line managers, maybe some comp analysts, certainly from the employee's perspective, have trouble negotiating that because they're supposed to be operating in an environment where they're being paid for performance, they're rewarded based on what they've delivered. But there's this element of position and range that can actually work against you if you're sitting, in the employee's position. So how do organizations put that together, and what is the purpose of having position and range within your merit matrix?
Well, Allison, the concept of position and range really stems from the fact that in most organizations, when you design a salary structure, you're designing it so that you have some minimum level that is acceptable to be paid. And then you have what we call a midpoint. That's usually the middle of the range, and many organizations will set that equal to approximately the market rate for that particular job. And then some percentage over that midpoint, you will have a maximum, which is the top rate that will be paid. So the notion of this salary range is that if you're below the midpoint, you are some percentage below market, and conversely, if you're above midpoint, you're some percentage above market. What many organizations will attempt to do in overall management of their labor costs is to say, if we have a goal to pay at market, then the further that the employee's pay is above market, we start sort of retarding the percentage increase that an employee is receiving because they're already over market. So in order for, say, an employee who has a rating of 3, which let's say that's a solid average performance rating, and they're right at the midpoint and they receive some percentage of pay, in order for a high performer to receive that same amount of pay, if they're higher in the range, then they'd actually have to have an above average level of performance. So as an employee's pay rises above market, the bar kind of goes up for their performance. On the other side of the coin, if you have a high performer who is very low in the range, that means you have somebody who's really doing a great job but well below market, then in fact we want to increase that employee's increase even further. So it goes from low in the range, high performer, get the highest increases, up to low performers very high in the range probably get no increase.
So your lower performers, it sounds like there's less of an emphasis on performance, even though that's an element that's considered. And as you stated, once you get above the market rate for your job, you've got to do more. You've got to over-deliver to keep yourself moving up on that pay scale.
Exactly. And the premise is, since you're over market, you are already receiving, quote, a premium for your work. Now, one thing that I would caution organizations about is we have to recognize that many of our high performers, because they are high performers, are going to be higher in the range. They've received higher increases over time. Managers should be diligent and prudent when they're looking at their high performers, to the very point that you made just a couple of minutes ago about, well, I'm penalized as a high performer because now I'm higher in the range. Those are decisions that managers need to make in terms of, we may elect, even though we have a high performer who's already high in the range, this person is really producing, really hitting the ball out of the park. We may make a decision, you know what, this person is high in the range, but they are a high performer. We're going to still give them the type of increase that maybe somebody lower in the range would receive.
What does it say about an organization who is taking position and range into account when they're deciding merit increases versus an organization who is maybe just looking at performance? Are those who are considering position and range doing something different, for better or worse, than organizations who are not?
I wouldn't categorize it as better or worse. It's different. I have worked in organizations where both of these examples have been used, where managers either had the traditional merit matrix, or we had a matrix that you were talking about, which really doesn't talk about position and range. It just says, if you're this performer, this is the range. And to that matter, I worked in organizations where we didn't provide managers any guidance. The expectation was, you're the manager, you have a pool of money, you need to divvy that up as you see fit. Some organizations, based on the culture and other factors, the managers do a little bit better with a little bit more guidance. Now, you always hear, well, I don't want anyone to tell me what to do, but when it comes to salary administration, many managers, even experienced, tenured managers, just get a little nervous about pay for performance, merit increases. It's something they really don't like to do. And so they're really looking for more guidance, and that's fine. What we need to make sure doesn't happen is the managers are using that matrix as a crutch and then going to the employee and said, well, the chart says that I got from HR, you get a 3% increase, so you're getting a 3% increase. Now that's not a very effective merit increase discussion, but unfortunately it does happen.